Namaste and welcome. I am Bhakti. On my channel, we are going to do baking recipes that are fail-proof and that will make your life easier. Today we are going to do a fabulous focaccia and I am going to tell you 7 mistakes that you need to avoid to make it a fantastic product. So let's get started. We've weighed out all the ingredients. What I'm going to start with is I'm going to take the refined flour, add some salt to the flour. I'm going to add the sugar to this water. You could add honey or any other sweetener that you would like in the same amount. The number one mistake to avoid is hydration. You don't want your bread to have too little hydration. Here I have used 75% of hydration, which includes both water and oil. To 400 grams of flour, I have taken 75% hydration, which means 250 ml of water and 50 ml of oil. Trick number 2 to avoid is to understand the yeast that your recipe calls for. Does your recipe say you're going to use fresh yeast, or are you going to use active dry yeast or instant dry yeast? Now the third mistake you need to avoid is that you need to check if your yeast is active. A lot of time this happens that you have put in all the efforts to mix the dough, all the ingredients, heavy ingredients like olive oil have been used, but then what you find is that your dough doesn't rise and you get a failed focaccia. So to make sure that all your hard work doesn't go in vain, let's see if the yeast is active. So we're going to add yeast to the water that we've mixed sugar with. Once it starts bubbling, you know that the yeast is active. Add the water that has yeast and sugar in it to the flour. Mistake number 3 that you would want to avoid is you don't want to add the water and the oil together at this stage, because the oil inhibits the formation of gluten. So oil is going to be used only for enrichment later. Make sure that the dough is kneaded well, and now we can just cover it with oil in this way and keep it for bulk fermentation for at least 45 minutes to an hour. While the dough is getting fermented, let's make the toppings now. Now the next mistake to avoid is to not experiment with the flavors. Here I'm going to use some Indian herbs along with the Italian herbs. I'm going to use a lot of olive oil. That is what brings out the flavor in the focaccia. So we're going to make 2 kinds of toppings today, but we're going to use both the toppings in the same bread. So now that the oil has heated up, I'm going to add some garlic to it. Now to this I'm going to add some bell peppers and some nice and thinly sliced onion. Now I'm just going to add some salt and season with the herbs. So I'm going to use red chili powder a little bit and just a little hint of dhania jeera powder. I've taken this out in a bowl and now we're getting ready for the second topping. Now I'm doing the second topping solely of olive oil, garlic and cherry tomatoes. I'm not going to cook it too much. I'm just going to add some salt. So you see all the juiciness of the tomato has mixed with the olive oil and the garlic and herb. It's going to bring out a really good flavor in the focaccia. I'm going to divide this dough into at least 2 parts. Do you see this amazing bubble that's come up? This is a sign of a really well made dough. Now I'm just going to take some toppings and I'm going to add it to the dough, so that when the dough is cut after it's baking, the topping is everywhere inside the focaccia. I have prepared a mold which is lined with oil, and now I'm going to place this dough in the mold. I'm going to lightly press it so the dough takes the shape of the mold, and now just going to add all the toppings to it. The topping with bell pepper, onion, next is with the tomatoes, and I'm going to also add the oil and juices that are there in these toppings so that we do not lose any flavor. It's only going to add more softness to your focaccia, so you do not want to waste it. Adding some olives, you could choose to add black olives or green olives here, and I'm going to just sprinkle some mozzarella cheese on it. So now it's time to keep it for the second fermentation and let it rise for at least another 20 to 30 minutes. Now I'm saying these timings according to the Indian weather, where it's quite warm right now. And if you're in a region where you're doing it, it's a little cold, you'll have to adjust the timing. But this is the time I want to tell you about another mistake that you need to avoid. The sixth mistake that you need to avoid is that you need to keep your focaccia for baking not in a warm oven but a really hot preheated oven. There's something called as oven spring that the bread goes through as it comes in contact with warm environment. So if the oven is only warm enough, the bread will just rise and it will get baked, but it won't get enough color quickly. But if the oven is preheated properly, the focaccia is gonna get baked and get an amazing color. The last mistake that you need to avoid is that you don't add fresh herbs. The fresh herbs are going to add a real nice aroma, superb color to your focaccia. And the last thing I'm going to top it with is some cheese. I'm using feta here, but you could use fresh mozzarella, or ricotta, a cheese of your choice. So try this recipe at home and let me know how it turns out. Let me know in the comments below which is the next recipe that you want me to do. And keep baking and see you next time.